Started the original North American Jews Harp Festival in 1991, and we did it for almost 20 years. And kind of it was time for us to step down. Our life changed, and so the whole thing kind of died until 3 years ago when these wonderful young generation of kids and new Jews Harp aficionados resurrected it again, and we didn't find out about it until last year. And so Kathy Vincent is my friend from Sumter, which is the original site of the Jews Harp Festival. We moved from there almost 20 years ago, but we've remained friends, and she and her husband, although they weren't Jews Harp players, Kathy's a musician and a singer, they were some of the support group, you know, that helped get things going. So she and I stayed friends, and both of our husbands now are disabled or unable to travel and, you know, sleep in motel beds and whatever. So last year we said, we have got to go, you know, and see what this is all about. So we're back. So the festival started in 1991 in Sumter, Oregon, which is a little mountain town between John Day and Baker City. A lot of us lived in Sumter at the time, or in Baker City. Wayland was one of our friends that helped from the very beginning. He was the one that we knew had to be our MC. And I think a lot of you know Wayland Harmon. And anybody that knows me knows that I could probably sit here and talk to you guys for 6 hours and not run out of things to say. I tend to elaborate a lot. So rather than take up that kind of time with just trying to give you history and everything, I thought I'd open it up to questions, what you're interested to know. I found last year people kept asking me the same questions. And then I brought all this research and all of our historical information, and I'm going to have it in the case with me around. I might set up back there for a while, but if there's something particular you want to see or look at, just come look me up. I'm just going to kind of give you an idea of what I got when I'm packing around, and then if you're interested, we can come and figure it out. So let's see, in 1995, we moved the festival from Sumter down to Richland, Oregon, in the Hells Canyon. We just had more community support, and it was the Grange is actually who hosted this. So they had the Grange Hall on the ground in a huge city park, and we had it there for, gosh, how long, Kathy? 10 or 11 years. It was great.
So 2000,
yeah.
Or 2001.
Yeah. But we had the big camping environment, you know, like you guys are experiencing this year, and that was, you know, the best part of the whole festival. You know, everybody, sound system had shut off about midnight, but all of us would stay out in the campgrounds and play all night long. You know, that's when we were younger. Could do that kind of stuff. So, and then the Richland thing kind of wasn't working out anymore. Different people took over the Grange, and at that time, some of our guild members had moved down on the Oregon coast and were involved with the Arts Center at Bay City, near Tillamook there. So they got it to where we moved the Jews Harp Festival to Bay City for, I don't think Denise is here, wasn't it 5 years? I think the last 5 or 6 years of the festival was in Bay City. I didn't get to go to a lot of those because, well, it took me in different directions then. But so that's kind of the generic history of, you know, the flow of the festival. I've got all kinds of information. Some people have said, how did it get started? You know, and I have to have a half hour to tell you how it all got started, but I'm happy to have individual conversations. Anybody have specific questions, something they want to know? Or? Okay, well then just let me show you some of the stuff that I've got. Over the years, I've put together notebooks with all of the information. I mean, we've got newspaper articles from the very first festival in Sumter, all of Fawn's boxes, pamphlets. He's an ethnomusicologist from Holland. My husband and I were 2 of the 7 people that Austria invited to represent North America at the 3rd International Jews Harp Congress in Mulm, Austria in 1998. And so we've got a lot of the materials that we gathered there. There's a German couple at the time, I don't know if they're still alive, but Rudolf and Uta Henning, and they had done all this research of all these paintings and sculptures and churches and stained windows all over Europe, all kinds of art that have Jews harps in them. And so I have copies of all that. I got, like I say, lots of copies of the Jews Harp Festival. Our very first festival, Leo Tadagawa from Japan came to it. So there's some of the pictures of him in here. And just lots of basic information. So this is, if you've got some questions or some things you'd just like to look at, this is a good notebook. I've also got a history, a generic history of the Jews Harp, dating back, you know, as far as we know. And that is mostly compiled from Fred Crane's work. That's the bin. Then Mark Poss, who they mentioned, was our webmaster. He, and I don't know how many of you actually go on to the old website. I know everybody does things through Facebook now, but he did a pictorial archive and all of us contributed pictures for years. I mean, there's Gordon Fraser's collection in here, there's Bill Gohring's collection, you know, at the time when all of these were taken. Great photos, they're all documented. Mark did a great job, and he printed this off after he finished the website pictorial archive just for, you know, posterity. So, you know, you might find some cool stuff in there to look at. And then we, because we were a nonprofit organization, at least that's how we started out, because it cost us quite a bit of money to put on the festival, we decided we would have memberships, form a Jews Harp Guild, a nonprofit organization, and we would have memberships. But we knew in order to sell a membership, we had to give something. So Gordon Fraser, in the beginning, started the Pluck newsletter. And I've got all of the copies that he did, including his very first one when he went to the International Congress in Yakutsk, Siberia. That was the second International Congress. Lots of great articles, and we have a whole bunch of spare copies of these. We found a box of them, so they're going to be back there on a giveaway table. And you guys just take any of them that you want. There's a lot of great information in these. And then once we really went online, I don't know how many of you knew Mark Poss and Dan Gossi, but they did our sound system for years. And Mark was the little internet guru. He's the one that talked us into doing the website and getting the chat conversations going. And so once he took over as webmaster, he started doing the newsletter online. Gordon stopped publishing his, and Mark took over. And so in here we've got all of the newsletters that Gordon did all the years that the guild was, or excuse me, that Mark put together. All of us submitted articles, but he did a lot of the work. There's a lot of fun stuff in here, a lot of historical stuff. And then I just brought a few of our books, things we've collected over the years. Here's Fred Crane's History of the Trump in Europe and America. This is an amazing book, if you haven't seen this. Here's one of the bins. This is, I can never say the German name because it's about that long, but this was the International Jews Harp Guild's newsletter, if you will. But Fred Crane did them all. You know, and there's articles and stuff in here from all the top Jews Harp people in the world, you know, during the time these were published. This is a 2007. Here's one of the, oh, this is the one from Mullen, from the International Congress that we went to in '99. And then just a couple other publications. I think here's one from Norway and one from Russia. I think this is from Austria. And some of them are in foreign languages. It's just kind of cool to look at the different stuff. I mean, like I say, I've got 5 times as much stuff, so wasn't sure how much space I'd have, so. And then I don't know how many of you know about the Jews Harp of the World map. Gordon Fraser used to give a workshop at the festivals, had a big, huge world map, and then had all the different Jews harps and where they came from, different parts of the world, and he would talk about every harp. And it was such a cool visual thing that they set it up, and Ingrid took a photo of it, and then they made a postcard, which are some for sale up there, but we used that as part of our fundraising stuff. Plus they did the great big posters. We don't have the posters left anymore, but I thought some of you might like to look at that, so I brought it. Just this is our copy, but I'll have it back there if you want to look at it. So I'm sure that there's lots of questions people have, but maybe you're just afraid to raise your hand, or you really don't care. Jane. I'm going to Blair. Sorry, Jane.
Would you tell us about your husband's dream about the design?
Oh, yeah, sure. Again, my gosh, it's hard for me to, just say something in 2 sentences. I just chat. Bill found When Bill's parents retired and they moved from their house, they gave Bill a trunk of all of his old stuff as a kid, and there was a Jew's harp in there that his mom had bought him when he was 8. And he used to play it, but he hadn't played it for a long time. This is probably around 1989, I think. And so he started playing the Jew's harp, and one of his buddies at the time played the Jew's harp. And in 1990, the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center in Baker City opened up. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's an interpretive center about the Oregon Trail, the pioneers, because the Jew's harp came across. It was a big part of life on the Oregon Trail. And some of the people that were arranging the events up there, they knew of Bart and Bill played Jew's harp, so they had asked them to come up and play at the grand opening. And unbeknownst to them, they had also invited Tom Bilyeu, who was the one who sold the Snoopy harp for years. He had Trophy Music Company made the harps for him, but you know, he traveled around and he's the one that sold the Snoopy harps, which is probably the harp almost everybody learned to play on in America anyway. And so lo and behold, he ended up showing up there. Well, Tom was kind of a wheeler and dealer, and he was ready to retire, and he thought Bill would be the perfect candidate to buy his business. But really all he had was a list of names of customers. You know, he wasn't really making his own harps, but it got Bill to thinking about making harps. And he's a craftsman, an artist, a woodworker, and it was just a natural flow, you know. And so he, in fact, back there, I showed it to a couple people. I have his very first harp that he made with me, so if some of you'd like to look at it. It's just a standard old design like the Snoopy harp is. But he really wanted to come up with his own design that was different from everybody else's. And so one night he had this dream about this Jew's harp design. Kathy, would you mind going and getting my, you know, the wicker basket thing? I could show you the two harps. Anyway, he had this dream about this design, and he woke up in the morning and he went, I have it. I have the design. And so, you know, he immediately went to workshop. His workshop started fooling around with it. Well, as I mentioned, the Leo Tadagawa, who was the ethnomusicologist from Japan, at that time we were only in correspondence with him, but he was like in charge of the ancient music instrument museum in Tokyo. I mean, he really into like the archaeological stuff and the history of the Jew's harp and steel and its uses, as well as, you know, a great player. So he published this, was going to publish this new little journal, so he sent us a copy of his first volume. Just, you know, what do you think? You know, let me know what you think. So we're flipping through it, and here's a picture of a Jew's harp that they dug up in an archaeological dig in Japan, and I believe it carbon dated over at least 1,000 years old, but before steel was used for, you know, instruments. And the design was exactly the same design that Bill dreamt. And really nobody was making designs, harp of that design at the time. And so that's how Bill came with his, well, he ended up calling it his mouth fiddle.
Thank you.
So this is his very first #1 harp.
Could I hold it against the whiteboard? And play it.
Well, I can play them, but I am not a player. I have always been the accompanist. So, and then this is his design, which I'm sure many of you see in the Russian designs, and some of also the other new designs that people were using. But before this, they really weren't making them. And like I say, I am not a player. I'm sure some of you guys could just make that same, but you can kind of see that. But all that was left in the picture from the archaeological dig was like this here, and it was all so rusted, you know, and jagged, but you could definitely tell what it was. And, you know, it was one of those things when you just get goosebumps. It's like, you know, this is meant to be. But, you know, over the years and all of our involvement in the Jew's harp, it is a mystical little instrument and has a lot of psychic power, and so these kinds of things, you know, shouldn't be a surprise. That's why we're all so unique.
I have a question in the crow's nest.
Yes.
You're a sound guy. You mentioned collections of Jews harps, were they old Jews harps or modern ones at the time?
All.
All
I mean,
old?
all of the guys that were involved in our movement to begin with, you know, Bill and Gordon Fraser, Ingrid has got a hell of a collection. You know, I mean, they collected any harp they saw. If they didn't have it, it went in the collection. And then, you know, the more the people traveled and brought different harps back, well,
Yeah, especially Fred Green.
yeah, Fred Crane. And, you know, like when we went to Austria, I mean, all the world makers were there. You know, if you can go to the international congresses, they're all there, and you can just, you know, if you have enough money, you could probably buy one of just about everything. But, yeah, and Gordon would bring a lot back, too, from his travels. And it's like, you know, one of you guys would be out somewhere and you'd find, you know, 10 of those, what are they called, the Italian harps that are kind of that.
Melanzano.
Yeah.
Scaccia Pensieri.
Yeah, Sasha Pensieri. I think Gordon found someplace where he got about a dozen of them. I don't know if he ordered them or whatever, but he brought them to the Jews Harp Festival, kind of like you guys do. And pretty soon everybody that was there had one of them. You know, that's how they built their collections. But yeah,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Is there any chance of this part of the world getting gentrified,
What do you mean?
fancied up, and made pretty? Well, I just love these festivals and these people, and I'm hoping there's not much gentrification gonna come down the pike.
Well, you know, the thing I've found about Jews Harp players, the people who are into Jews Harps, they're real. They don't have to put on airs, and we just come as you are and just have as much fun as you can stand. Really. We used to go down a week before the festival to get everything set up, you know, and so by the time Friday and Saturday and Sunday came, we were rolling. But by the time Monday came, we were all dead. It always amazed me too, because almost every year when we go back home on Monday or Tuesday, we stop at the post office and get our mail, and almost every year there was something in there that said, what's the date for next year? So we started always setting the date at the last year's festival so people would know. But sometimes that's not easy to do until you get your venue solidified, you know. But I think you guys got a great thing going. I love this venue.
Do you have a favorite memory, or is there a standout story from any of the festivals you've been to?
Oh my gosh.
Well,
There's been a lot of them.
one of the things the festival was, it also was unusual instruments. So we had people that had the 7-foot auto harps and
The zithers, the quarter
and the
zithers.
zithers and recorders and all sorts of wonderful ancient and handmade instruments that they then accompanied the Jews harp, and it was just fabulous.
In the early years, it was the Sumter Valley Jews Harp and Unusual Instruments Festival. And really in the beginning, we had more unusual instruments and just general musicians like myself, or Wayland, who was a guitar player at the time. You know, we had a live band on stage that the other instruments, if they wanted, could be accompanied by. And in the beginning, we had more unusual instruments than anything, to the point that we had to start saying, every group that gets on stage to perform has to have a Jews harp in it. Because we would have groups coming with all these great instruments, but there weren't any Jews harps, but it's a Jews harp festival. So we went around and around with that for a couple of years, but it really made the mix quite interesting. Having all of the, you know, stuff you've never seen before. I'd never seen anybody play a musical saw before. I knew they did it, but we had 2 or 3 saw players. We had ditch players. Yeah, and Homer Welty, was an older man from Kaiser. He handmade these huge giant zithers, auto harps, you know. I mean, he even had his fingernails all glued on to play them. And these people just went around to music festivals at the time. We were blessed to have them. Kind of helped people realize that there's more instruments out there than just guitars and fiddles, especially in Eastern Oregon. And it ain't bluegrass, it ain't me. Well, Jews harps are good bluegrass instruments, but there are lots other styles to play too.
So we got to the point where it was getting difficult to take all of our instruments along with it. The Jews harps were really easy to pack around compared to some of the camera dulcimers.
Well, that's the Jews harp players and all. Well, I think my time's up, so I'm going to help us stay on schedule. And like I say, if you've got any questions or want to look more at this stuff, just come find me, because I'll be around all weekend.
Thank
Thank you.
you.